My stepdaughter came to my kitchen crying, "His kids hate me." Then she repeated the same words she used to break me years ago. For almost 20 years, I swallowed every cruel thing she said because she was a child, because she was hurting, because Daniel loved her, because everyone expected me to be patient. I told myself that being the adult meant taking the hit and smiling through it. I told myself it would get better if I stayed kind long enough. And then, last month, Sarah sat at my kitchen table with red eyes, saying her husband's kids treated her like an outsider. She said, "His daughter told me I'm just the woman her dad married." The room went quiet. Not outside. Cars were still passing. The refrigerator was still humming. Somewhere down the street, a dog started barking. But inside me, everything stopped. Because I had heard those words before. From her. And after years of pretending those words had not followed me through my marriage, through Daniel's funeral, through every holiday where I sat beside people who never fully claimed me, I looked at my stepdaughter and said, "That sounds a lot like karma." Her face changed like I had slapped her. Maybe I did, just not with my hand. I met Sarah on a cold Saturday afternoon in Portland. She was 10 years old, sitting on the front steps with a purple backpack beside her and her arms folded, like she had already decided the entire day was an insult. Daniel had warned me in the car. "She can be quiet with new people," he said. I remember smiling because I thought that sounded normal. A little girl meeting her father's girlfriend. Of course she would be quiet. Of course she would be unsure. Then Daniel added, "She's protective." That was the gentle word. When we got out of the car, Sarah looked at me like I was something Daniel had dragged home without asking permission. Daniel said, "Sarah, this is Margaret." She didn't smile. She didn't move. She just said, "I know." I tried anyway. "It's nice to meet you." She looked at Daniel. "Can I go inside now?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Say hello properly." Sarah sighed like I was exhausting her by breathing. "Hello." Then she picked up her backpack and walked inside. I stood there on the porch, holding a container of cookies I had made because I thought that was safe. Not too personal. Not too motherly. Just cookies. Daniel touched my arm and said, "Give her time." So I did. I gave her time for years. Daniel and Patricia had already been divorced when I met him. I was not the reason their marriage ended. I had not known him while they were together. But none of that mattered to Sarah. In her mind, I was the proof that her parents were not getting back together. I was the woman who made the divorce feel permanent. I understood that. At least, I tried to. I never asked her to call me mom. I never moved her things. I never changed her room. I didn't sit in the front row at school plays like I was trying to claim a place I had not earned. I didn't correct her when she said, "My dad's house," even after Daniel and I were married and it became my house too. I made room. That was what I did. When she came over every other weekend, I learned what she liked. She hated onions, unless they were cooked down so small she couldn't see them. She liked her grilled cheese cut diagonally. She only used one kind of shampoo because Patricia used it at her house, so I bought the same bottle and kept it in the bathroom. When she forgot her homework one Monday morning, I drove across town before work and dropped it at the school office. Sarah didn't thank me. She looked at the folder in my hand and said, "My mom could have brought it." I said, "I know." I was closer. She said, "You don't have to act like my parent." I stood in that school office with a receptionist pretending not to listen, and I smiled because if I didn't, I would cry. "I'm not trying to," I said. "Just helping." She shrugged and walked away. That became the pattern. If I packed snacks for a weekend trip, I was trying too hard. If I didn't pack the snack she wanted, I didn't know her at all. If I gave her space, I didn't care. If I asked how school was, I was prying. If Daniel and I laughed in the kitchen, she got quiet, like our happiness was something we were doing at her expense. Patricia didn't help. She never screamed at me. She never made a scene. Honestly, that would have been easier. What she did was smaller and harder to fight. She would tell Sarah things like, "You don't have to listen to Margaret. She's not your mother." Or, "Your father is building a new life, so you need to protect your place in it." Or, "Some women want a ready-made family without earning one." Sarah repeated those lines without understanding how adult they sounded coming from a child. Once, when she was 12, I asked if she wanted to help me make cupcakes for Daniel's birthday. She looked at the mixing bowl, then at me, and said, "My mom says women like you only do nice things so people think you're good." I remember turning toward the sink so she wouldn't see my face. Daniel came in right after and asked why the room felt tense. Sarah said, "Nothing." I said, "Nothing." And just like that, another little cut disappeared into the walls of that house. At 13, she embarrassed me in front of Daniel's parents. It was Thanksgiving. Nancy had brought rolls. Robert was watching football too loudly in the living room. Daniel was trying to carve the turkey and pretending he knew what he was doing. I asked Sarah if she wanted cranberry sauce. She said, "No thanks, Mom." For half a second, my heart jumped. Then she laughed. Not a big laugh. Just enough to show everyone she had done it on purpose. Oh wait, she said, looking around the table. I forgot. You're not my mom. You just like pretending. The room froze. Daniel said, Sarah. She leaned back in her chair. What? She does. Nancy looked down at her plate. Robert cleared his throat. Nobody knew what to do with me. Daniel told her to apologize. Sarah crossed her arms. Why? It's true. I wanted someone to say more. I wanted someone to say that I was not pretending, that making food and doing laundry and driving forgotten assignments across town counted for something even if I had not given birth to her. I wanted Daniel to do more than sound tired. Instead, he said, that's enough. And we all kept eating. That was when I started becoming smaller. Not all at once. Not dramatically. I just pulled back piece by piece. I stopped asking about school unless she brought it up. I stopped offering advice. I stopped buying little things I thought she might like. I stopped going to events unless Daniel specifically asked me. I learned to be present without reaching. It was safer that way. By the time she was 16, Sarah had become sharper. She was smart, pretty, and angry in a way people excused because she got good grades and said cruel things calmly. One night, Daniel was late getting home. Sarah had missed the bus, and I picked her up because Patricia was working and Daniel was stuck across town. The whole car ride was silent until we were almost home. Then she said, you know I don't need you, right? I kept my eyes on the road. I know. You're just here because Dad doesn't like being alone. My hands tightened on the wheel. She kept going. You don't understand real parenting. You're just the woman Dad married. There it was. So clean. So casual. Just the woman Dad married. I pulled into the driveway and turned off the car. For a moment, I couldn't move. Sarah opened the door and said, are we done? I wanted to say, no, we are not done. I wanted to tell her that I had spent 6 years trying to be kind to someone who treated kindness like theft. I wanted to ask how old she thought I had to be before I was allowed to have feelings too. Instead, I said, yes. She went inside. I sat in the car for 10 minutes. When Daniel came home later, I told him what she said. He closed his eyes and rubbed his forehead. She shouldn't have said that, he said. I waited. He added, but she's 16. Everything feels bigger at that age. I stared at him. He must have seen something in my face because he reached for my hand. I'll talk to her. He did talk to her. I know because I heard raised voices upstairs. Sarah cried. Daniel came back down looking exhausted and guilty, and somehow I felt bad for both of them. That was the cruelest part. Even when I was hurt, I still felt responsible for the hurt in everyone else. After that, Sarah became polite in the way strangers are polite. She said hello. She said goodnight. She thanked me if Daniel was standing there. She stopped throwing open insults, but she never let me forget I was outside the circle. At her high school graduation, I sat beside Daniel while Patricia sat closer to the aisle. Sarah hugged Patricia first, then Daniel. When Daniel gestured toward me, Sarah gave me a quick side hug and said, thanks for coming. Like I was a neighbor. Daniel looked proud and sad at the same time. I told myself it was enough. Then Sarah went to college in Seattle, and for the first time in years, the house felt peaceful. I know that sounds awful. It felt awful to admit. But it was true. Daniel and I had quiet dinners. We watched movies without tension in the hallway. We took weekend trips. Sometimes, I would see a photo of Sarah online and feel a strange ache. I miss someone who had never fully been mine. Then, during her first year away, she came home after a breakup. Daniel had gone to bed early. I woke up around midnight because I heard something in the kitchen. At first, I thought someone had broken in. Then I saw Sarah sitting on the floor by the cabinets, wearing one of Daniel's old sweatshirts, crying into her knees. She looked younger than 19. She looked like the little girl from the porch again. I stood in the doorway and asked softly, do you want me to get your dad? She shook her head. I stayed where I was. Do you want me to leave? She wiped her face with her sleeve and said, don't make it weird. I won't. I sat on the floor across from her, not too close. For a while, she didn't speak. Then it all spilled out. Her boyfriend had cheated. Her friends knew before she did. She felt stupid. She didn't want Patricia to know because Patricia would make it about herself. She didn't want Daniel to know yet because he would try to fix it. So I listened. I made tea. I handed her tissues. I didn't say anything big or wise. I didn't say, now you know how it feels to be unwanted. I didn't use her pain to punish her. I just sat with her. Before she went upstairs, she paused near the doorway and said, please don't tell Dad I cried like that. I won't. She looked at me for a second. Thanks. It was one word. I held onto it like a fool. For the next few months, things were different. Not perfect. Not close. But softer. She texted me once from a grocery store asking how to tell if an avocado was ripe. She sent me a picture of a dress and asked if it looked too formal for a dinner. She called me when she burned rice because she didn't want Daniel to tease her. That Thanksgiving, when she left, she hugged me first. It was quick. Stiff. Almost awkward. But after she drove away, I went into the pantry and cried quietly between the canned soup and the paper towels. Daniel found me there and smiled like he understood. "She's coming around," he said. I wanted to believe that so badly. For a while, I did. Then Daniel died. It was sudden. A heart attack in the middle of an ordinary morning. One minute he was drinking coffee and looking for his keys, and the next I was on the floor beside him, screaming into the phone while the dispatcher told me to keep doing compressions. There are sounds from that morning I will never forget. The siren. The front door banging open. The paramedic saying my name even though I didn't remember telling him. The silence after they took Daniel away. At the hospital, Sarah arrived with wet hair and no coat. She must have driven straight there. Patricia came too, standing behind her with one hand on Sarah's shoulder like she was guarding her. When the doctor told us Daniel was gone, Sarah made a sound I had never heard from another human being. She fell into me. Not Patricia. Me. For 3 days, we were not stepmother and stepdaughter. We were just two women whose world had split open. She slept on my couch. I made coffee neither of us drank. She cried in Daniel's closet holding one of his shirts, and I sat beside her without speaking. At the funeral, she held my hand. I thought grief had finally burned away the old lines between us. I was wrong. After the funeral, everything changed again. At first, I blamed grief. People become strange after death. They get angry at the wrong things because the right thing is too big to fight. Sarah started pulling away. She stopped answering my texts. When I asked if she wanted to come by and choose more of Daniel's things, she waited 3 days before replying. Then she came over with Patricia. I knew it would be bad the second they walked in together. Patricia was polite in that cold way she had. Sarah looked pale and tense. We sat in the living room, and Sarah said, "I need to know what Dad left me." I told her Daniel had left her money, just like we had discussed. He had also named her for certain personal items. I had already set aside his watch, old photos, his fishing jacket, the mug he used every morning, and some letters from when she was little. Sarah looked around the room like the walls themselves had betrayed her. "So you get the house," she said. I blinked. "This is my home too." "It was Dad's house first." "No," I said carefully. "We bought this house together after we married." Patricia looked at me then, and I saw it. The old story still alive in her eyes. I was the woman who took. The woman who got. Sarah said, "You get the house, the life insurance, the memories, everything. And I get a box of things." I felt like the floor moved under me. "You get more than a box," I said. "Your father loved you. He planned for you." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You sound like a lawyer." I looked at Patricia. She looked away. That was the moment I realized grief had not brought Sarah closer to me. It had made her search for someone to blame. And I was the easiest person left. She took Daniel's watch, the jacket, the photos, and the mug. Then she disappeared. Not completely. That would have been cleaner. She texted on birthdays sometimes. Christmas sometimes. If I messaged her first, she gave short replies. She posted things online about missing her dad, and I would stare at the photos, trying not to feel angry that I was grieving him alone while she acted like I had stolen the right to miss him. A few years later, she got married. Her husband's name was Mark. He seemed nice. Polite. A little nervous around me, like he knew there was history but not enough to understand it. I was invited to the wedding. I almost didn't go. Then I thought of Daniel. I thought of how he would have wanted me there. So I bought a dress, wrapped a generous gift, and drove to Seattle. At the reception, Sarah introduced me to someone as my dad's wife. Not my stepmom. Not Margaret. My dad's wife. I smiled because I had become very good at smiling while something inside me folded in half. I left after dinner. Sarah didn't notice, or if she did, she didn't call. Mark had 2 children from his first marriage, Joshua and Emily. They were 8 and 10 when Sarah married him. A year later, Sarah and Mark had a baby girl, Melissa. I watched most of it from a distance. Online, they looked happy. Pumpkin patches. Matching pajamas. First days of school. Birthday cakes. Captions about blended family life and love-making room. I wanted to believe it was true. I also wondered if Sarah ever looked at those children and thought of me. Then last month she called. Not texted. Called. Her name lit up on my phone while I was standing in the kitchen cutting an apple, and I just stared at it until the ringing almost stopped. When I answered, she said, "Hi." Just that. But I heard it immediately. She sounded tired. Not sleepy. Worn down. I said, "Hi, Sarah." She asked if she could come by. I said yes before my pride had time to object. She came the next afternoon with store-bought muffins and a smile that looked like it had been taped onto her face. She stood on my porch for a second, holding the container between us like a shield. "Sorry for just calling out of nowhere," she said. "It's okay. Come in." She looked around the house when she stepped inside. Her eyes moved over the framed photos, the bookshelf Daniel had built, the old chair he used to sit in. For a second, I saw her as the grieving daughter again, not the woman who had left me alone with all of it. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where she had once cried over that college boyfriend. The same table where Daniel used to read the paper and complain about the coffee being too hot, then drink it anyway. Sarah talked around the real reason for almost 20 minutes. She talked about Melissa being clingy. She talked about work being exhausting. She talked about Mark being stressed. She picked at the edge of a muffin but didn't eat it. Finally, she said, I don't know what to do about Mark's kids. I stayed quiet. She looked embarrassed, like saying it out loud made her feel like a bad person. They hate me, she said. The words landed softly, but I felt my body tense. She kept going. I know that sounds dramatic. They don't scream at me or anything. It's just constant. Little comments. Little looks. They correct me if I say anything. If I make dinner, they say their mom does it better. If I remind them about homework, they say I'm not their parent. If I give them space, they say I don't care about them. I knew that rhythm. I knew it too well. Sarah rubbed her forehead. Mark keeps saying they're adjusting. He says they're kids and I need to be patient. And I am trying. I swear I'm trying. I don't want to replace their mother. I don't want them to call me mom. I just want to live in my own house without feeling like a guest everyone resents. My throat tightened. She gave a small, broken laugh. Emily is the hardest. She looks at me like I ruined her life. Last week, I asked if she wanted help with a school project, and she said, why would I want help from you? I looked down at my hands. Sarah's voice cracked. Then yesterday, we were in the car, and she told me I would never understand real parenting because I'm just the woman her dad married. There it was. The exact knife. Maybe the words were not perfectly identical. Maybe memory sharpened them. But it was close enough that I could feel 16-year-old Sarah sitting in my passenger seat again, telling me I was nothing. I didn't speak. Sarah started crying. I know they had a life before me. I know they lost the family they thought they had. I know I'm not their mom. But I'm a person, Margaret. I'm a human being. I'm trying so hard, and they act like I'm just this thing in their house. A human being. That was what finally broke me. Because how many times had I wanted to say those exact words to her? I am a person. I am a human being. I am not a symbol of your parents' divorce. I am not a thief. I am not a shadow standing in your mother's place. I am just someone who loved your father and kept showing up for you even when you made it hurt. I looked at her for a long time. I should have reached across the table. I should have said I was sorry. I should have been the safe place she came looking for. Instead, I said, that sounds familiar. Sarah went still. I knew I was at the edge of something. I could feel it. I could still stop. But I didn't. I said, maybe it's karma. Her face changed instantly. What? I heard myself breathe. I'm not saying you deserve to be hurt. That is exactly what you just said. No. I'm saying maybe now you understand what it felt like. She pushed back from the table. I was a kid. And I was a person. The words came out sharper than I meant, but once they were out, I couldn't pull them back. Sarah wiped her face, angry now. You're really comparing yourself to me? I was 10 when you came into my life. I know. My parents were divorced. My whole life had changed. I know. No, you don't know, she snapped. You had Daniel. You got the house. You got him every day. I had weekends and school breaks. That hit harder than I expected because there was truth in it. I had Daniel in the ordinary ways Sarah lost him. Morning coffee. Grocery lists. Laundry. Half-watched movies. Arguments about bills. The boring pieces that make a life feel whole. But I had also spent years sharing him with her pain. I never tried to take him from you, I said. She laughed bitterly. That's what you always say. Because it's true. You wanted me to feel bad. That stunned me. What? You always wanted me to feel guilty for not loving you the way you wanted. I stared at her. Then I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because it was so wrong my body didn't know what else to do. Sarah, I said, I wanted you to like me. That is the embarrassing truth. I wanted it so badly I let you hurt me for years. Her mouth tightened. I kept going, not loud, but unable to stop. I let you call me desperate. I let you say I was pretending to be family. I let you treat me like an intruder in my own home because everyone told me you were hurting. And you were. I knew that. But nobody ever seemed to care that I was hurting too. Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears looked different. You're being cruel, she said. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm finally being honest. She stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. I came here because I thought you would understand. I do understand, I said. That's why I'm not going to lie to you. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. And maybe she didn't. Maybe she only knew the version of me who swallowed everything. She grabbed her purse. The muffins stayed on the table. At the door, she turned back and said, Dad would be ashamed of you. That one almost did it. I almost apologized right there just to stop the pain. But I thought of Daniel in that hospital bed. I thought of all the times he told me to be patient. I thought of all the times patience meant silence. So I said, maybe. But I think he would also be ashamed of how long he let me carry this alone. Sarah left without another word. For 2 days, I felt sick. I walked past the muffins until they started to look stale. Then I threw them away and cried over the trash can because even that felt like some tiny funeral for the relationship we never managed to have. I kept hearing her say I was a kid. She was. That is the part people keep throwing at me like I don't know it. Sarah was a child when she hurt me the worst. She was angry and confused, and the adults around her did not handle it well. Patricia fed her resentment. Daniel tried to keep peace by softening consequences. I kept swallowing pain because I didn't want to prove anyone right about the evil stepmother. We all failed in different ways. But then I think about the wedding, when Sarah was 30 and introduced me as her dad's wife. I think about after Daniel's funeral, when she treated my grief like competition. I think about the years of half-texts and polite distance, and how she only called me when she needed someone who understood the exact pain she once caused. She was a child then. She was not a child forever. Mark texted me 3 days later. He wrote that Sarah had come home devastated. He said she had finally opened up to me, and I had punished her for things she said when she was young. He said blended families are complicated, and I of all people should know that. I stared at that message for a long time. I typed, "You have no idea what happened in this family." Deleted it. I typed, "Ask your wife what she called me when she was 16." Deleted it. I typed, "Protect your children from adult resentment before they become adults who weaponize it." Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "Yes, I do know how hard blended families are." That was exactly my point. He didn't reply. A week later, Sarah sent me a long message. She said she had been thinking. She said she was sorry for some of the things she said to me when she was younger. She admitted she had been cruel. She said she didn't understand then how much it must have hurt to keep trying and keep being rejected. For a moment, I thought that was the apology I had waited almost 20 years to hear. Then I kept reading. She said my karma comment was still unforgivable. She said I had used her lowest moment to make myself feel vindicated. She said she came to me needing support, not punishment disguised as honesty. She said if I truly understood, I should have helped her instead of making her pain about me. I read it again and again until the words blurred. Because she was not entirely wrong. That is what makes this hard. If she had written something selfish and cruel, I could have thrown my phone onto the couch and been done with it. But there was truth in what she said. I did use her pain as a mirror. I did make that moment about the past. I did say the one word that would hurt her most, because some wounded part of me wanted her to finally feel the weight of what she had done. So I did not answer right away. I waited until the next morning. Then I wrote back. I told her I accepted her apology for the past, but I needed her to understand that apologies do not erase the years they arrive late to. I told her I regretted the word karma because it sounded like I wanted her to suffer, and I did not. I told her I never wanted her marriage to be hard or her stepchildren to reject her. But I also told her I would not pretend her words did not reopen something in me. I wrote, "You came to me because you knew I would understand. But you seemed surprised that I understood from experience, not theory." Then I gave her the only advice I had. I told her not to make Mark's children responsible for the pain their parents caused. I told her not to compete with their mother. I told her not to force closeness or chase gratitude. I told her to keep showing up, but not to erase herself. I told her that being kind does not mean letting children practice cruelty without correction. Mark needed to parent his kids, not hide behind their pain. Then I wrote the hardest part. I hope you become the kind of stepmother I tried to be. I also hope you become the kind of adult I needed around me when I was being hurt. She did not answer for 4 days. When she finally did, it was short. She wrote, "I don't know what to say yet." I wrote, "You don't have to." That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, nothing dramatic has happened. No big family meeting. No tearful reunion. No perfect apology where we hug in the kitchen and the past finally becomes clean. Real life usually does not give you that. But Sarah did call once. It was brief. Awkward. She asked if Daniel ever said anything about feeling guilty after the divorce. I told her yes. He felt guilty all the time. He loved her so much that sometimes he confused protecting her with letting her hurt people. She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "Did he know I was awful to you?" I looked out the kitchen window at the backyard Daniel used to fuss over every spring. I said, "He knew some of it." "Not all." "No," I said. "Not all." Her voice got smaller. "Why didn't you tell him everything?" I almost laughed again, but I didn't. "Because I loved him," I said. "And because I was tired." She cried then. Quietly. For once, I did not rush to comfort her. I stayed on the phone. I let the silence do what it needed to do. Before she hung up, she said, "Emily told me yesterday that I'm trying too hard." I said, "Maybe you are." She gave a wet little laugh. "That's not comforting." "No," I said. "But it might be useful." Then I told her something I wish someone had told me. Do the right things because they are right, not because you think they will earn love by a deadline. Kids know when kindness is begging. She didn't answer for a moment. Then she said, "Is that what I made you do?" I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said. "Sometimes." She whispered, "I'm sorry. It was not dramatic. It was not enough to fix everything. But it was real. That is where we are now. Not healed. Not close. Not enemies. Just standing on opposite sides of a bridge neither of us knows how to cross yet." I still feel guilty for saying karma. I think I always will. There is no way to make that word gentle. There is no way to pretend I said it only to teach her something. Part of me said it because I was hurt, and I wanted the hurt to finally have a witness. But I also feel lighter in a way I am ashamed to admit. For years, I carried Sarah's childhood pain like it excused everything. I made myself smaller so she could feel bigger in her father's life. I accepted being treated like a guest in my own marriage because I thought that was love. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was both. I look back now and think the real tragedy was not that Sarah rejected me. She was a child at first. The tragedy was that every adult around us taught her my feelings were the safest ones to ignore. Patricia protected her bitterness. Daniel protected his guilt. I protected the peace. And peace, I have learned, can become just another word for silence. I do not want Sarah to suffer. I mean that. I do not want Joshua or Emily to hurt her the way she hurt me. They are children, and children should not be turned into weapons. I hope Mark steps up. I hope Sarah learns when to be patient and when to have boundaries. I hope she does not spend years shrinking in her own kitchen, waiting for someone to decide she counts. I hope she does better than we did. But I also hope she remembers. I hope the next time Emily rolls her eyes or Joshua says, "You're not my mom," Sarah feels more than pain. I hope she feels recognition. I hope she remembers a woman who bought the right shampoo, drove forgotten homework across town, sat on the kitchen floor at midnight, and kept trying long after trying became humiliating. I hope she remembers that I was not just the woman her dad married. I was a person who loved him. I was a person who tried to love her. And maybe I said one cruel word after years of swallowing hundreds of hers. So now I am asking honestly, because I still do not know how to feel about it. Was I wrong for telling my stepdaughter it felt like karma when she cried to me about her own stepchildren treating her the same way she treated me?